Hello everybody, welcome to part 2 of the Mercury SR2, and in this video we're going to take a look at the setup assistant. The setup assistant is very important and it's a good idea to have a very good understanding of how it all works. Now, to keep things simple, I'm not including the gyro in this video. However, I'll do a number 3 video, and in that video we'll add the gyro to the setup assistant, and you can see how it all plays out together. Now, for this example, trying to keep things simple for everyone, we're going to have a very basic aircraft. So let's have a look at how I've set up this model. So if we go into our functions, I've got a throttle, which we can pretty much ignore for this video. I've got 2 aileron servos. So if I have a look at my aileron servos, I've got a left and right aileron. So I've just labelled them aileron L and aileron R for right. So I've got the even numbered servo on the right hand side of the aircraft, odd numbered on the left. And at the moment I've just basically got them both going in the same direction, because basically for the video it doesn't really matter. Let's move back to the function screen and have a look at the elevator. So elevator, I've got 2 servos assigned. However, for this first video I've reduced the throw on the left elevator servo to 0, so we're basically just going to be using the 1 elevator servo. So you can see there I'm moving the elevator stick now, but only 1 servo is actually operational, so we can ignore servo 5 for this part 2 video. Again, just to keep things a bit simple. Later on, probably in part 3 or possibly part 4, I'll introduce, say, 2 elevator servos, and we'll go from there. Rudder, just got 1 servo on the rudder stick, so just the 1 rudder servo on channel 6. I've got a gyro gain assigned to my rotary right hand rotary knob, and basically if we go to the home screen you can see the gyro gain there. So if I rotate my knob, I think I've set it to about half travel, so 50% in the positive direction and negative 50. For this video you can ignore it. However, for the second video where we're going to use the gyro gain, or we set up the gyro, that'll come into play for that one. And let's go back into functions. What else have we got here? I was playing with this the other day. I've got the capacity reset, so I've shown you how that works to reset the battery capacity on the screen or in the telemetry. I've got a switch for the sequencer, so this will be for a later video when we go into the sequencer and how that works. So for this video it just won't be used. I've also got 2 channels which are not being used at the moment, so you'll notice there's no assignment, and therefore vectored thrust. So if we have a vectored thrust nozzle on the rear of, say, a jet, later on in one of the videos I'll show you how to introduce or set up a vectored thrust with, say, the gyro, aileron elevator and all that, and how we use the setup assistant, how that detects it all. So for this video we can ignore that. Again, they're just not being used. And for this video I'm going to also include a nose steering or wheel, for instance. So for instance, if we have a servo that activates steering on your nose, or could be your tail I suppose, if you have an extra servo for that, you might assign an extra channel for it. So for instance, in this case I've got channel 7. And we tend to set it up, say, to be controlled via the rudder stick. Now at the moment I don't have it activated because I want to show you a basic example for the setup assistant. But later in this video I'll activate a nose steering wheel and how that can cause a problem when you try and run through the setup assistant, and just something to be aware of, that's all. It's only because a lot of people get caught up with the number of servos that the setup assistant is expecting when you're programming it versus what the radio is actually producing or sending to the actual Mercury. Okay, so let's go back to the servo screen. So here we can sort of look at all our servos. So remember, I've got 2 aileron servos and just a single elevator servo. So you can see on channel 4 there, got elevator right operational, but elevator left is non-functional. And of course we've got the rudder as well. And I'll bump the throttle stick because it's on the same stick there. And that'll do for this video. Well, as in the programming of the model and the core. Now, if you move over to the little display, so hopefully this comes up okay on the video. You might have to view the video on a PC screen, might be a little bit better so you can zoom in on the display. I could just zoom in on the display, but then you can't see the cores display, so I want to be able to see both at the same time. Okay, let's invoke the setup assistant. So remember, you've got the rotating menu. So you just rotate around. I'm sure most of you that own one of these know how to get into this menu. If we go into the setup assistant, I've reset the actual Mercury just before I switched on my camera. So let's see what it says when we enter the setup assistant. Now remember, there's no gyro. So let's hit enter or select it. So we have a couple of options here. So first of all, we've got wing type selection. So if I go into the wing type, let's see what options it gives us. It gives us normal. So that's pretty much just a straight aircraft. We've also got a delta aircraft, and that's it for wing type. So you've got normal and delta. Now, one thing to be aware of is if you read the instructions, it makes a clear mention of the fact that you need to set up all your mixes. So if you're doing a delta aircraft, ailerons or whatever, you have to set the mixes in the radio, because basically the Mercury, Competition and the Royal don't really do that mixing. The basic mixing is not done within the unit, it's done in the radio. However, the Mercury is expecting to see those channels move. So for instance, if you've got mixing, say on an elevator type configuration, or say vectored thrust for instance, so when you move say one stick, you might be moving more than one channel. It's expecting to see that depending on what you've set in this menu. So if you've got that incorrect, if you send too many channels to the Mercury, say it's expecting to see 2 servo channels move, but you're sending 3, it'll come up with an error, and I'll show you that a bit later. Okay, let's move on to tail type. So remember, wing type, you just basically got 2 options, the normal and the delta. If we go down to tail type, you'll see we have a couple more options. So we've got normal tail, and then you've got ailerons and VTAIL. So remember, if we have a VTAIL aircraft, you have to set up the mixing in the radio first before you run the setup assistant. However, you also have to tell the setup assistant that, okay, we're going to be using a VTAIL setup, so it expects to see certain servos or certain channels move when you're programming the setup assistant. If you get this incorrect, it'll get confused and spit an error out. So for this example, I'll just go say for normal. Oops. And then we've got the vector configuration. Now later on, I will set up a vector configuration. Like I said, I've programmed the radio for it. However, I've disabled those servos for now. So as this model is programmed at the moment in the radio, it doesn't have vector switch or vector thrust configuration switched on. However, if it did, we just go into here and basically select yes. Okay, so we'll just leave it at the default, pretty much normal, normal, and no vector thrust. We then move on to next. And this is where a lot of people get confused. So this differs a little bit from the instruction manual actually. So the instruction manual was written, I think, with version 1 firmware. The Mercury and I assume the Competition and the Royal, I don't actually own a Competition or Royal, so I can't confirm it. However, this screen looks a little bit different from the actual instructions, which may cause some people to get confused. So on the left, we have our functions, our primary functions, our ailerons, elevator, rudder. Fairly straightforward. Then on the right, we have 2 numbers, and you'll notice it's under the column servos. So for ailerons, we've got 2x1, elevator, we've got 2x1, and rudder 1x1. So what do those numbers mean? Okay, in layman's terms, the number on the left, so for instance, if we pick on the ailerons, the number on the left is basically telling the Mercury, or the Competition, or the Royal, how many channels to expect from the radio. So how many channels are actually moving when we move the aileron stick in the actual radio. So remember, for this example, we've got 2 aileron channels. We've got an aileron left and an aileron right. So when I move my aileron stick, we're actually controlling two servo channels basically. So we have to tell the Mercury that we've got two channels coming in, or two channels are going to be changing as I move my aileron stick. So that first number pertains to how many channels the radio is sending to the PowerBox. So fairly straightforward, hopefully. Now, the second number, so we've got a 2x1. The second number tells the Mercury how many servos per aileron, basically, or flight surface. So it knows we've got two channels. We've got a separate left and right channel, basically, for the ailerons. However, for a basic aircraft, we may only have one servo per aileron on each wing, one per wing. So the 2x1 tells the Mercury that we've got two separate channels controlling the ailerons, a left and a right. However, we've only got one servo connected per aileron. So when we run through this setup assistant and go to the next screen, it'll automatically detect the two channels coming from the transmitter and assign one servo per side on each aileron. It'll automatically do that. If we actually go in there, let's see what options it gives us. So let's select ailerons. So you notice the little dot there's gone solid on the left hand side of the screen. And if I now increment the values, we've got 2x2, 2x1, and that's it. We've only got those two options. And you think, oh, where's, like, you know, if I've got a real basic aircraft, I might only have one aileron channel required. The problem with that, I mean, you normally wouldn't have just one servo controlling your ailerons. I know some trainer aircraft do that, but you know, you move off from a trainer to your next aircraft and it's pretty rare that we see one servo controlling both ailerons. And the reason being is, say for a simple thing like differential mix, how do you do differential mix with just one servo? It's pretty pretty hard. So, you know, as a minimum, you'd have two channels, like a separate left and a separate right channel controlling the ailerons at all times. So this assistant really gives us just that one option of having two input channels. However, we can actually change it to 2x2. So basically we can have two separate individual servos per wing if you like, if needed. However, for this example, let's keep it simple. And later on, I'll show you another example with, say, more servos and whatever, and some of the flexibility that the unit gives us. And also, just another thing that catches people out is that the assistant does not cover every single configuration on each aircraft. So, for instance, you know, you might have your rudder here. So at the moment, we've just got one servo, and a rudder typically only has one channel because you're only moving one flight surface, just the rudder. However, say you've got an aerobatic aircraft or a 3D aircraft and you might have a huge rudder on it and you might want, or you might have to have three servos, all matched of course, but you might have three servos that need control. If we go down into here, you'll notice that you can't sort of select three servos. You can only select, let's see what the options are. We've got 1x1, so that's one rudder servo with one input channel. So one channel from the transmitter connected to one servo. The next option is to have two servos with the one channel from the transmitter. And then if you had some huge large scale aircraft, you might, or twin rudder aircraft, you'd have two separate channels. So you might have a left and right rudder. So here you'd set up two separate channels for your rudder in the actual radio first. And then you tell the PowerBox unit that we want two separate channels to control the rudder. And of course, in this model that I've got here, I've only got the one. However, I don't know if you've got an FA-18, the twin rudders, you'd have to select a 2 option here. And then if we go to the next option on the little display here, it gives us another servo basically we can connect to that system. And when you run through the setup assistant, it'll actually incorporate that servo into its output ports. But at the moment, we've just got the simple setup. One thing where people get confused is basically assigning this screen. So yeah, just be aware that here on the left hand side of the screen is a number of channels in the radio that we're sending to the PowerBox unit to control this function. So again, remember my elevator, we're only going to be using one channel because I've only got one channel connected at the moment for my elevator for this example. So let's change the elevator. Go to elevator, make that, say, a 1x2 if we had two servos, or in this example I'll just have one servo connected just to show you how it assigns the ports. So hopefully you understand this particular screen here. So remember, it's important to always remember that the left hand number pertains to the number of channels we're sending to the Mercury. So it basically forms the input to the Mercury, so it understands or detects what channels are moving. If you have more than those channels defined, so for instance, remember we talked about the nose wheel here. Where is it? Here we go, nose wheel. So if we had a nose wheel set up at the moment, if I move my rudder stick, only the rudder channel 6 moves. However, if I had the nose activated as well, so I might have the rudder stick controlling not only my rudder but my nose wheel, we will get an error after we go to the next screen. And I'll show you that in a second as well. Okay, so just keeping it simple, let's move to the next screen. So hopefully you've understood that screen reasonably well. It took me, when I first got the Mercury, it took me a bit of time to scratch my head to work out what was going on, because the instructions don't refer to this type of layout. They refer to a single column. If you look at the instructions, it doesn't quite match the screen, and that's because the firmware is upgraded. So obviously the firmware changed this setting, this assistant, at some stage, but the instructions haven't been updated, so just be aware of that. Okay, now let's see what happens when we go to next. Okay, so remember we set up 2 ailerons. We told the Mercury we've got 2 ailerons, so automatically it's actually showing us that here we've got an aileron-R for right and aileron-L for left. And then in the middle column we've got 2 dashes, 2 undefined values at this point in time. And then on the right hand side we've got an A and a P. So the A and the P refer to the ports on the actual Mercury. So remember we've got 16 ports on the Mercury and they're labelled from A. So port A is number 1 and port P is the last port. So the default assignment for 2 ailerons is to have the right aileron plugged into port A and the left aileron into port P, which is the last port. Now I know some people don't like to be told what to do, so you don't actually have to have those 2 ports. If you want all your servo wiring to be, around the other way, or you want all your ailerons on one side of the actual Mercury, we can change that later. It's very easy to do, and we do that in the output mapping screen. However, for now, let's see, or let's have a look at what's the screen telling us. Now notice at the top it says move the aileron stick. So let's go ahead and move my aileron stick and let's watch the cause servo output screen. So you'll notice the 2 ailerons, the left aileron and the right aileron will move. So let's move it, and I moved it one way and it's automatically assigned, it's automatically detected. Remember we've told it we're using 2 channels from the radio. We went for a 2x1 configuration in the previous screen. So it's automatically assigned channel 2 to the right aileron and channel 3 to the left aileron. And we plug in the servos to ports A and P. So you've got the right aileron servo will plug into port A and the left aileron into port P. So what would happen if it got it backwards? Well, that's no problem, because all we need to do is move the aileron stick again. So let's move it in the other direction. And you'll notice the numbers toggle. So now notice the aileron right servos is channel 3 and left is channel 2. So it's basically swapped them around. So every time I've moved my aileron stick now, it'll swap those servos around. So this is just convenient, just to make sure it's set up correctly for you. So you don't have to go into the output mapping screen and program it in there. So remember, just move your stick and it detects the 2 channels and it basically goes through the different configurations. If you had a 3 servo setup, you'll notice when we set up vectored thrust later on, we'll have our, say, elevator and then pitch. So you'll have 3 items here. We can switch all 3 servos around to make sure that the right servo is assigned, or the right channel is assigned to the right function, I should say. So again, just move your stick around and those values will toggle to give you the result that you want. Okay, so for this example, I'll just keep it the same as my radio. So we've got channel 2 is the right aileron. So we've got aileron R on channel 2, and that'll plug into port A. And aileron left is channel 3, and that's correct. So let's move on to the next screen. And now it wants to detect the elevator. So you notice it's assigned elevator-R. So we've told it we've only got one elevator servo. So it's only giving us one elevator servo. And at the moment, it's asking us to move the elevator stick. So we've got a little dash in the center of the screen. So let's see what happens when I move the elevator stick. And you'll notice it's now assigned channel 4, because as I've moved the stick, the Mercury's detected that I'm playing around with channel 4, or channel 4 is the only one moving, and it's assigned it to port B, so the second port. And okay, we're happy with that. It's got the right assignment. So the next one should be the rudder. So let's go to next, and there we have the rudder. So now if I move the rudder stick, and you'll notice it's assigned it to port C. If I move the rudder stick, it should detect channel 6. So remember, rudder is on channel 6 for this radio, or for this model. Let's move the rudder stick, and there you go, channel 6. Now watch what happens if I move the throttle stick. So if I move the throttle instead of the rudder, it's assigning channel 1. So see how it's detecting the channels? So I'm moving the one channel, and away you go. Move the rudder again, back to channel 6. Let's see what happens if I move the stick, my throttle and rudder stick, in two directions at once. Let's try and confuse it. Okay, so because we're moving two channels, it's coming up with an error, and it's saying registered channel count does not match. I'll do that again. So I'll move the rudder and the throttle. Registered channel count does not match. So this is where a lot of people get into some confusion, where they have multiple flight surfaces. They might have their flaps mixed with the ailerons. Then when they program the unit, they forget to disable the flaps while they're programming it. So not only are the ailerons moving, but their flaps might be moving as well, and it confuses the assistant. So you've got to make sure you just have the primary inputs as required. So there we go, we have the rudder set it correctly now. So let's click on next. And there we go, assistant is now completed. So I could show you a little video on connecting the servos. Yeah, let's do that. So I'll move away from the screen and we'll have a quick session on connecting the servos. Okay, here we have the Mercury with one servo. So if you remembered when I was talking earlier and we were programming the assistant, port A, which is the this port on the right hand side, so port P, P for Papa, is on the left hand side, port A, so they're numbered from right to left if you have the PowerBox orientated in this direction. Let's plug in this servo here into port A, and then I'll grab another servo and we'll plug this into port P, so the last port, the very last port. Let's plug him in. These Futaba plugs, I've had to trim the little tab on them so they fit. Okay, so these are our two aileron servos. So if I move the aileron stick, now trust me, I am moving my aileron stick, you'll notice the servos move. So they're our two aileron servos. So fairly straightforward, too easy. Now remember the next servo that was set up was the elevator servo. We only had the one elevator servo for this model, so that was assigned port B, B for Bravo. So let's get the third servo, plug it into port B. So there's our elevator servo. So again, let's move ailerons. So there are our ailerons. I'm just moving the one stick. And there's our elevator servo. So if I'm a bit more careful so I don't bump the elevator. There's our ailerons. And there's our elevator movement. Fairly simple. And the lucky last was the rudder. And that was port C. So just to prove that it does actually work, later on when I set up the gyro, I'll set up these servos a little bit better. So we've got the two ailerons, we've got elevator, and this is our rudder servo, so that's plugged into port C on the Mercury. Again, got ailerons, elevator, and if I move the rudder stick, we've got rudder. Simple as that. Now remember, I did say if you don't like the layout on here, so for instance if you wanted, say, I don't know, maybe this is, say, so at the moment this is our left aileron servo, but say the way the Mercury was mounted, you want this to be on the other side and you wanted this servo, or the right hand side servo, to be on the left hand side of relative to the Mercury. All you need to do is go into the output mapping and alter that. So it's pretty easy to do. So any port's really programmable for any servo. So it doesn't really matter. So when you follow the setup assistant, it has its own rules and it sets out like a default setup, but you can change that. So all you need to do is go to the output mapping and copy the settings on, say, port P for Papa, and say you wanted to plug it into port 10. Just copy those settings that are set in the output mapping screen across to port 10, which is, I've got to remember, it's alpha. So what do we got there? 8, 9, 10. So that'll be port J. So you just basically go to port J and program it the same as what port P has in the output mapping settings. It's fairly simple to do. So it's easy enough to rearrange the wiring to suit your aircraft. Okay, now let's go back to the core and Mercury screen, because I want to show you about, remember I was talking about the nose wheel and how people get caught out with multiple flight surfaces when they're trying to use the setup assistant and they get confused, brings up errors. So I just wanted to show you how you get around that problem. So back to both screens again. We have, if I move my rudder stick, you'll notice we're just moving channel 6, which is my rudder. However, let's enable the actual nose steering. So nose wheel steering. So remember I had the function here, but it wasn't assigned to any stick or anything. So let's assign it to the rudder. So if we go back to the servo monitoring screen, we've got channel 7 here, which is our nose wheel. So if I move the rudder now, we have the two channels operational. So again, this is where people get caught out. So when you run through the setup assistant, so let's reset the, let's go back to factory reset again. You can actually enter the setup assistant the second time and it saves the settings, so you don't actually have to reset it. But I just wanted you to follow this example just so you get comfortable with the programming of the actual assistant. So let's go into the setup assistant again. So normal wing type, normal tail, no vectored thrust, hit next. Ailerons 2x1, elevator we only want 1x1, rudders 1x1. So remember, when we move the rudder stick, the PowerBox is only going to be expecting the one input. However, remember we've got the nose wheel here. So what you need to do is disable the nose wheel temporarily. You can always reactivate it later and assign it to a output. So how you do that is you go into next. So follow the assistant at this stage. So let's do our ailerons again. Let's teach the ailerons. So let's move the aileron stick. And we're happy with those assignments. Let's do elevator. And we're happy with channel 4, as that's my channel that's coming from the core to the Mercury for the elevator control. Now for the rudder, before we move the rudder stick, what you need to do is disable the nose steering. So, you know, quick way is just to go into our functions and, oops, went into the wrong one. So nose steering, get rid of that. So we've got no control for the servo for nose steering. So if we look at the servo monitor screen, and when I teach the rudder stick, we should only have the rudder channel moving. And it learns that correctly, channel 6. We then go to next. and the assistant is happy, it's completed, the servos move as normal. So how do we now assign, say, channel 7 nose to the actual Mercury? Well, all you need to do is, let's make it live, so let's enable it. So let's go back into here, let's assign the rudder stick to it, click on OK. So now when we look at the core, we've got channel 7 is moving, as well as the rudder on channel 6. But how do we assign it? Well, it's sort of done automatically, because if we count on the servo outputs on the Mercury, if we look at number 7, so we've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So number 7 is G. If we go into the output mapping on the screen, now you can do this from the core as well. So let's bring that up as well. So if I go to the home screen, just on one of the widgets here, sorry about my hand being in the way. Let's go to the output mapping. Okay. By the way, there is a bit of an error here. I think there's a bug. I talked to Richard about this, so he's aware of it, so they'll probably fix it at a later stage. But this FS that appears here under function type, it should be gyro. So when we go into the output mapping screen of the Mercury, so if you look at the OLED display, let's have a look at output mapping. So we've got output A. So both of these screens are looking at both the same data now. So I've got aileron right for the function, that's all correct. However, if you look at function type, on this screen it says gyro, however on this screen it says FS. Because I wasn't sure what the FS stood for, so he said it's probably like an indexing error, so it's picking up the wrong text. So just wait for a next firmware upgrade, they should sort that out, it's nothing major. So it works fine. So whenever you select FS, it's selecting the gyro. So functionally, it's not a problem. It's just the text on the display is not quite right. Okay, so let's move the output. If we go to B, you'll notice the core screen changes as well. I haven't touched the core screen. That's following the controls on my Mercury. So remember, we've got channel 7, which is, what did I say? It was port G, G for golf. So let's move over to port G and let's see what it's set to. So port G is set to direct. Now remember in the first video what direct means? Direct means the channel is just passed straight through. So if you plug your nose steering servo, or the nose gear steering servo, into port 7 or port G I should say, that'll function as your normal steering servo for your nose. Simple as that. Then later on, when we introduce the gyro, we can assign a gyro to this nose wheel as well. So we can have separate gyro gain for the nose wheel relative to, say, the flight surfaces. So you can have, the gyro basically on the rudder function with a separate gain impacting the nose wheel. So we can use that feature quite well. So remember, the Mercury allows you to have up to 3 gyro outputs per flight surface. So we can use one of them. So typically, you'd have a couple of servo, or one servo on your rudder, or 2 or 3. They would tie up one gyro output for the rudder function. So you still have 2 free ones to use. So you can use an extra one for, say, the nose wheel. Okay, I think that'll probably do for this video. Like I said, get familiar with this, have a bit of a play, plug in some servos. Later on in the next video, we'll be connecting a gyro as well. So that will add a bit more complexity. Let's just get out of this menu. What else can I should have wrote some stuff down to cover. I'll cover like multiple servos that probably in the next video, I'd say, so that we'll see how the gyro impacts the servos, to make sure the gyro, controls all the correct servos. So, like I said, with the setup assistant, there are a few little quirks. For instance, we can't easily set up there's no way to, even though we've got 3 gyro outputs for instance, you can't connect 3 servos using the setup assistant to a flight surface. You have to do that. You have to add the 3rd one manually, and you do that in the output mapping screen, which is no big deal. However, if there's also gyro associated, you've got to make sure the gyro settings are also set up correctly for that 3rd servo. But I'll probably cover those off in the next video where we introduce the gyro. Okay, hopefully you've enjoyed this video and hopefully you've learnt a little bit about the setup assistant. Like I said, it's just a basic introduction to the setup assistant. Have a good play with it, understand it, because there's a lot of posts on the forums, you know, where people are trying to set up an aircraft and they might have a slightly complicated aircraft with multiple flight surfaces moving off the one stick. They get the error, remember that error about the channels not matching, and they're scratching their head, you know, why don't the channels match? Hopefully this video goes some way in explaining why that's the case and how to get around it. Okay, stay tuned for the next video. Thank you all.